Hey, this is Chris. We often get asked by clients what are the main differences between managed funds and ETFs, and what are some of the pros and cons of each of them. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the three main differences that I see and the three main similarities between managed funds and ETFs. So first of all, on the similarities. So both unlisted managed funds and listed ETFs are both great ways of accessing diversification. Generally they'll own a basket of different securities. It might be shares, it might be something else, but diversification is not something that differentiates them. You can get that both from a listed product and an unlisted managed fund. The next one is structure. So again, both a managed fund and an ETF are set up as an open-ended structure, which means that there isn't a finite number of units, and the number of units can increase and decrease over time as people subscribe for more units or redeem units. And so the size can increase or decrease over time. And what that also means is that an unlisted managed fund or ETF generally will trade very close to the assets of the underlying holdings, because there is an ability for money to come in and out on a at least daily basis. And the third is the ownership safety or security. Again, this is a similarity between managed funds and ETFs. They're both very secure because the actual underlying assets are owned by a trustee on behalf of unit holders. And so if anything ever happened to the manufacturer or the issuer of a managed fund or an ETF, doesn't matter to you because you still have rights over the underlying holdings. So they're three of the similarities. What about the differences? Well, the key difference that most people would be aware of is the pricing. So an ETF is priced throughout the day. It's listed on an exchange. There's buyers and sellers all the time providing liquidity and pricing throughout the day. Sometimes that's market makers providing the buy and sell. Sometimes it's just natural buyers and sellers. But the great thing about ETFs is that you can buy and sell throughout the day, and that price updates throughout the day. The difference for managed funds is generally there's only one price each day. There's an end of day price that you can subscribe for units or redeem units at. And around that end of day pricing, there's a bid-ask spread. And so you might lose, let's say, 0.25% of your money by getting in and out at that end of day price. With ETFs, there is a bid-ask spread. Look, it varies in size quite a lot. Some of the more liquid, larger ETFs have very tight bid-ask spreads. You might only lose 0.03% of your portfolio getting in and out. However, there's also the added cost of brokerage when you're buying ETFs. If you're buying through an online broker and not an automated service, like Stockspot, where we actually pay the brokerage cost for you. So that's one difference. Another one is transparency. So look, transparency can be a similarity. Both managed funds and ETFs can provide full look through to what's inside the portfolio. But what I'd say is generally there are more active unlisted managed funds where they don't have a lot of transparency. You might only be able to see the top 10 holdings, and that might be published quite infrequently. Whereas with an ETF, and particularly an index style ETF, you've got full look-through transparency of the portfolio every day. You can see what holdings are in there, what percent in each holding, what country the exposures are attached to, what industry. You get a great understanding of what's inside there. But look, on both sides, there are exceptions to that rule. There are transparent managed funds, and there are also these days non-transparent ETFs. A lot of the new active ETFs, for instance, don't actually provide a lot of transparency of what the underlying holdings are. So that's one similarity. The last one is, that's one difference. The last difference I wanted to talk about is access. So similar to pricing, if you want to access an ETF, you want to go onto the stock exchange, either through an online broker or an automated service. That's the way that you access an ETF. Whereas managed funds, you usually access either directly through the fund manager. So you might go via the fund manager's website or via some sort of platform that gives you access to them. So, often these are used by financial advisors because they tend to be the biggest users of these platforms. So overall, look, managed funds and ETFs are both great ways to get diversified exposure. If you came to me and said, Chris, I've got $50,000 to invest, where should I put it? My answer would be, look, I think ETFs are a great way to go. They provide better liquidity and transparency around pricing as well as what the underlying holdings are. Easy to get in and out without paying big spreads, and you can be quite cautious about your process of getting in and out throughout the day. And these days, I just think ETFs are the way to go. 10 or 20 years ago, managed funds probably gave you exposure to more different types of asset classes that weren't available as ETFs. But now ETFs give you such a range of different things you can invest in. I personally wouldn't bother with managed funds. I think they're archaic, they're in the past now, and ETFs are the future way to get diversified exposure to different assets.